website where we always post these on our YouTube channel. So thanks for that. As you're coming in, if you could rename yourself, that would help us. Give us your name, your YTP site, where you're physically located, and I'll do the same. If you need help, it's on the top right of your little picture icon. You rename, and it brings up a box to change that. All right, we're near 100 on the call. We have 1 or 2 trying to get in yet. Robin Vincent's really having some trouble. I'm not sure why.
It says you need a passcode when you sign on, and if they don't remember the passcode, then they can't get in because you didn't include it, or it's not included in the invitation.
Okay. I'll send her a quick note. I happen to have that person in my phone.
I don't know if that's the problem, but it might be.
And that was YTP for all, right?
Yes, with a capital A in the all.
Capital YTP?
Yes.
Yes.
Number 4, capital ALL.
Yeah, the L's aren't capital.
Right. Sure. Capital A and then LL. Thanks, Keisha. I appreciate that a lot. In the essence of time, we need to be starting. So on this call, I'll quickly summarize or see who else is here. Management team-wise, we have myself on the call, technical assistance provider, Jesse Berkey, Mid-Willamette Valley. And then we have Garrett Weeb on the call, Northwest region. He's going to be co-presenting on the data literacy component. We have Terry Falkenstern for Central and Eastern, Mary Jo for Southern Oregon, and Michelle Markle, kind of dual role right now, former technical assistance provider for Portland and East Wasco, North, that area. And then Michelle Markle as statewide, director, coordinator for YTP.
Yeah.
Statewide coordinator for YTP. Charlotte Alverson's on here somewhere, and Sally Simich from ODE. So that's us. We're here to support you guys as we look at data literacy and rolling out with an IGA process. So here we are. What's our next slide? Just our announcements, right? As I mentioned, this is being recorded and we're here for you. So YTP budgets, your TAPs have been saying for quite some time now, check with your business office, figure out if you have unused funds, use the documents that Michelle sent out. And in those, if you're looking at paying students, it's important to figure out how much you're paying the students and justify the work they're doing and make sure we're not having a mock sheltered workshop being developed. So we're looking at above minimum wage payments, supporting the youth, getting them into community placement. There's an announcement about Oregon Statewide Transition Conference. It is coming. It'll be virtual, asynchronous, synchronous, hybrid model. It runs about a week long there from March 31 to April 7th. Summer Academy, we're looking at doing that if we can. It'll be in July 2021. We want to see you guys, if possible, in person. We're planning either way. We'll have something for you. If we have to be online, we will. Next.
All right, so here's what we're going to do today. We're going to scare all of you away with our nerdiness because Jesse and I sat down and had a lot of very technical thoughts about today. But what we really want to get done is we want to understand the use of data within YTP, how it informs you at the local sites, how it helps us take a snapshot of how YTP is doing as a statewide program. And then in the big picture, how we can become better at what we're doing to help you and how you can improve your sites. We want to look at how the data works in the cohort model. So we'll take a look at that a little bit down the road. We also want you to have a better awareness of how to use outcomes and benchmarks within your implementation of your YTPs. And then we also want to make sure that you guys know about some of the common issues we found within the YTP database and how to avoid them.
Yeah, and this is a good point to pause right here too, and just say that as you guys have questions, Garrett and I have built in two slides, two sections. If you can hold those questions to the greatest extent possible, that'll help us, and we'll address them at those times and write them down, put them in chat. We'll look at the chat at that time, but that'll help interrupt or keep the flow rather from being interrupted. Again, I'm speeding through a little bit, so I apologize if I'm going too fast. Just trying to get make sure we have enough time for this hour and a half. All right, definitions, here we go. Pretty straightforward, but we're gonna start with a poll. I can't see the animations. So is our poll up, Garrett?
Now it should be.
All right, a Zoom poll here. There we go. Let's click on these. How do you best define the word data or data? We're at 90 of 116 people. We're doing good.
In less than a minute too.
95, will we hit 100?
Did Sally bring candy?
100, 86%. We have 116 on the call. $122 people on the call now, and 117 looking at the poll. We hit 90%. Let's go ahead and end it. Pretty straightforward. What is that pen mark all over the slide?
That's what I was just wondering.
We have somebody writing an annotation on the screen. No big deal. We can move on with that. 83 people, 81% of you guys on this call with us said factual information based as measurements or statistics used as a basis for reasoning, discussion, or calculation, with 11% and 9%, 9% being the low one in the middle, information in a digital form that can be transmitted or processed. Actually, folks, they're all correct answers, including the bottom one. So this is a true Merriam-Webster definition here. Next slide, Garrett.
Can we get out of the poll?
We were hoping you guys would choose the first one, quite honestly. Wasn't set up to trap you, but factual information, which is what we use in the YTP database. What is happening with our schools? What is happening under our intergovernmental agreement, which we'll refer to later and say it a few times. We call it the IGA. And we're trying to use that term instead of a holdover term known as grants. So when you hear your technical assistance provider saying IGA, that's what we're referring to, and that's what it's called. It's an intergovernmental agreement between a school district and VR. So we're going to talk today about outcomes, the results or consequences of having a YTP site and the implementation of it. We're going to talk about the differences between outcomes and performance outcomes, or performance outcomes goals as it's written here. I'll just read it. Measurable performance goals as outlined in the Intergovernmental Agreement, IGA, between local sites and VR. We're looking to have the engagement at 70% of student base at YTP exit 6-month and 12-month, with a VR rehab closure at 50% in urban settings, 40% in rural, and that's of the student base. Don't worry, we'll break it down and put it into more clear language for you all. What is an engagement? Students in employment, participating in post-secondary education, training, or both. What is rehab? Usually we ask a voc rehab counselor. I'm not sure if there's any on the call could speak to it, but rehab is when somebody has successfully been employed in competitive integrated employment in the voc rehab agency and held their job for 90 days or longer. And then the case is eligible to be closed as rehab. Our database, which I think you guys know, there's two forms, rehab or other. So that's how VR closes. Moving on. Performance outcomes are what we measure in YTP. They're true measured outcomes of students engaged and closed rehab over time as associated within the cohort model. Cohort model is a term that we're using this biennium to talk about our students who were enrolled into VR. If it's this biennium, it's this cohort. So we'll get into it in more detail. Keep writing down those questions as you have them, and hopefully we answer them before we get to the Q&A point. Benchmarks, points of reference to measure progress toward a goal. So it's not the goal, but yet it's what are we doing to reach the goal is one way we can look at a benchmark. Our goal is meeting intended performance outcomes as outlined in the IGA, and it's always based on the student-based number in YTP. So each site has an agreed upon number. Here it is. Thanks, Garrett. The number of students to be served by a local YTP site in the biennium as agreed upon.
Here's your cohort definition.
There it is. Wish I could see these ahead of time. Students who enrolled in core YTP services. Those who applied for VR and had an intake done within the biennium fall within the student cohort. So for 1921, how many intakes have you done this 2-year cycle? Those will be your cohort counts moving ahead. Next.
All right.
Here we go.
So next we want to just have a little bit of a comparison between what are outcomes and what are benchmarks. Benchmarks has been this really magical word in the world of YTP, and it's always been a focus on how many students do we get in with VR, how many students get their plans written and signed. And outcomes is really a measure that was hard to follow and was always secondary in the past. And so outcomes are really what YTP wants to achieve. They're measurable goals, they're tangible, but it's really the end result of students that start their journey through YTP over time. So there are measurable performance goals as outlined in the Intergovernmental Agreement. And as you can tell, this is a definition that we had on the definition slide earlier, just as a reminder. Benchmarks on the other side are measurable steps or points over time that YTP sites take towards achieving these outcomes. And it's kind of trying to pace ourselves and make sure that we're making progress to achieve our big goals at the end. So to maybe put this a little bit in a picture, I know that there's a lot of people in our beautiful state who love the outdoors and who like to go hiking. And when I was thinking about trying to reframe this so it helps us to understand what it is, I was picturing a scenic destination hike. Like think of trying to climb on the peak of one of our beautiful mountains or get to an outlook or some place that you have as a destination in mind. If you are a person that follows the 10,000 steps a day rule, you're not going to walk 5,000 steps towards your goal. And once you get to those 5,000 steps, you turn around, even if you haven't gotten to the ultimate destination that you had in mind, and come back and tell all your friends that you were on this really amazing hike towards this point. And after 5,000 steps, you turned around because you met your personal performance goal for the day. and the beautiful lookout, the peak of the mountain, or whatever it was that you were trying to achieve became secondary. Really, what we're trying to measure or to get to is we want to get to the peak, and then we can really brag about the good work or workout in the case of a hike that we got in, and the destination that we've achieved. So in that sense, when it comes to measuring a program and program performance, benchmarks are a secondary measure to outcomes, because meeting benchmarks doesn't mean we ever achieve the goal that we had set out. And we need to make sure that we understand that that's something that helps us to pace and helps us to stay on track, but it's not the goal to just meet certain benchmarks. Jesse.
Here we are talking about focusing on goals. And this was within the context of YTP. So if we remember, our outcomes are that top of the peak. We're looking at Mount Hood. We want to climb up there, stick a flag in the top of the hill. How do we get there? And what we're looking at is a blue box that measures outcomes. Our YTP database measures outcomes. It's broken into two components, those that count as engaged and those that are unengaged on the outcome side. Outcome meaning students that are below this green that are working, and their case was closed with voc rehab, and those that are in training being post-secondary training, not an 18 to 21 program, counting as part of your outcome, but moving into community training, 2-year training, certificate training, something outside of high school, or those students that are both. So when we're saying we're looking at outcomes, we want to see in YTP, 70% of the entire student base being engaged as having rehab or training or both, with a 30% allowable attrition rate, those students that move out of your student base or out of the state and you can't contact them anymore, or the unfortunate death of a student, something like that falls under this 30% of the whole 100 that is under outcomes. So we'll break this down more in another slide, but I'm hoping that this makes sense, just to realize that outcomes can be those that are unengaged, it's still an outcome. Those that are engaged are one of our outcomes. So our IGAs specify this language that say, we do want 70%. Now we'll get into the math of this, how it counts, how it relates to the cohort model soon. So if you're worried about that, we will get there. Go ahead, Garrett.
And just as another illustration or a reminder, the 40 or 50% rehab rate is a subset of the 70% of engagement. Because students that are rehabbed at that point, at least at the time that they exit YTP, will be counted as engaged in employment. But there might be some students, if they go the training route, that might not be counted as rehabs for VR purposes, but they're still engaged in terms of our YTP perspective. Oh, sorry, Garrett. Go ahead, Mary Jo.
I was going to say, Lynn Carter made a point that it sounds like at VR, they don't call it rehabbed anymore. They call it stable. So I just want to make sure we have the right language and everybody is understanding that language between that stable and rehab are the same.
Yeah, this is Lynn. Yeah, to determine, we still use the term rehab. Sorry, Mary Jo, it was just a quick thing that I typed in. But in order to rehab, they have to be considered stable. So they have to meet all the criteria of being stable, which is they're content with the pay rate. They've got the hours that are in the plan. The employer likes them and they like the employer. So all the expectations are level, and they're happy. Then we consider that stable, and then we can call them rehabbed.
Yeah.
So it may not be 90 days. It could be a little over, depending on what it takes to get to there.
Perfect. Thanks, Lynn.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn, for clarifying and speaking up from the voc rehab perspective. We really appreciate that. Garrett and I kind of struggled a little bit when we put this together. Do we talk about outcomes first? Do we talk about benchmarks first? It's kind of a which comes first, the chicken or the egg scenario here. It takes outcomes to have a successful YTP site. It takes meeting your benchmarks to have outcomes. So we started with the backwards planning model. Let's talk about outcomes. This is what we're written. This is what gets written into IGAs. And the hope is that we can serve and have 70% of all the kids in our student base get to the outcome level. So that's why we started here. Our next slide talks about benchmarks, right? So what about benchmarks?
Yes, it does.
What are those? And we liken it almost to the stepping stone, or like Garrett said, maybe a bench that's parked halfway up the hill on your favorite hike. Am I getting to the bench? And I know I have to reach the bench to reach the top. So that should make sense to all of you. Are you nodding your heads with us? In the past, the database it existed and it captured benchmarks, but it was hard to capture the outcomes to know when the students met those benchmarks and when did they meet the outcomes. The new database tracks that with each cohort. So as we turn this database on, it's designed to work into the future, right? YTP is a systems change program. And our math will begin to make more sense in 4 years when we can use that data to look back at the now and say, yes, we met it. Yes, we had 70% of those outcomes available and met at 70%, or no, we didn't. What could we do as a site to improve our outcomes for the next grant cycle? Sorry, IGA, right? For our next intergovernmental agreement. We'll get there.
We're
folks.
trying to reprogram ourselves. It's not always easy.
Yeah. So I think I just said this. It records benchmarks as a measure pacing, yes. And they're designed to be tools to ensure that sites are working towards hitting those outcome goals. It's fairly straightforward. Here's a slide from our current database. I'm guessing that many of you have seen this before. If you're an administrator on this call, which hopefully we have some because we're also talking IGA rollout, and you'll be interested to learn more from that perspective. And you need access to this, please do reach out to your technical assistance provider or have your transition specialist reach out to us and CC you on an email. There are accounts designed for admins so that they may monitor and read only the information that the transition specialist enters into the system. So just a quick thing here, these benchmarks are these first 4 boxes, well, 3 actually. Your student base number is found under this first column on the top left, and then your 3 benchmarks that are measured within the database. These are the same as past years. How many students have met our application benchmark, been enrolled into Voc Rehab? How many are VR eligible? There's a 60-day gap potentially between these 2 numbers. Whoa. And then how many are in IPE? Again, there's a gap of time between when you're eligible at Voc Rehab and when services or a plan is written for your service. Everything else on here exited from YTP, or how you exited YTP down on the bottom line are outcome measures. Are you engaged at exit? That's yes or no. 70% of those hopefully are, with a 30% attrition rate, as we indicated on the prior slide. Same for engaged and at 12 months. Does that increase over time? That's a question we're asking from the management side. If you weren't engaged at exit, are you engaged at 6 months? Maybe you left school and said, I don't want anything to do with you. 6 months later, you came back, well, 4 months, whatever, back to the transition specialist and said, hey, I want to work. And they knew a job and they helped you get a job in the next month. At 6 months, that engagement might go up because then the student is employed. So we're monitoring that. That's how we as management team use this tool. We also look at what is this closed rehab number and what is the closed other number. So I think that's it from this slide. What's our next one?
All right, our next one builds up a little bit. So we'll try and put this into a graphic illustration to help you kind of build a sandwich, really. At the bottom, the piece of bread, as Jesse described in our last conversation, is our program components. What is it that we do through YTP to achieve outcomes, help kids get a job, and then to meet the benchmarks and kind of work towards the ultimate outcome? The top slice of bread is defining our outcomes. So we have our rehabilitation rate for VR, competitive integrated employment. We didn't put all the descriptors in. We used the definitions earlier, so fill in the blanks there. Otherwise, the page gets too busy. And then our YTP engagement perspective. Some of the components that we do, and where basically the story of almost every YTP student starts, it's pre-eds. Trying to get to know the student and see where they're at and help them take some little steps, doing smaller activities to get them ready for work or post-secondary education. And then it's a process from that starting point. So here are some examples of what takes place within YTP, starting with pre-eds, moving into the process of getting into VR. And these continue on. So they're the foundation really of this, but they carry on as we move forward. And then we have our benchmarks that kind of fit in between, that are our points of reference. Are we moving enough students into our program? Are they getting their IPEs written? And ultimately, are they ending up in an engagement situation, or are they engaging along the way? Oh, did you want to add something, Jesse?
No, I think you did well there. I was just thinking through the last slide, and there was one little component there that was missed maybe, but it's fine.
Did you want to back up?
No, we'll get there.
All right.
It'll come back around,
So
I think.
Here's your first chance to dig holes into our presentation.
There isn't anything else in the chat, so if you guys have questions, shout them out.
I think it's important to just note for everybody too, we're not using any of this as a gotcha or say, hey, you've been doing this wrong. Just trying to make sure everybody understands and give credit to those that do understand the difference between a benchmark and the difference between an outcome and how they're different. I know in the past we may have seen quite a bit of emphasis on, well, I needed to get X number of students enrolled at Voc Rehab so that they could be counted in my number when I wrote a new IGA with VR to say I've done this. And we're saying let's look at work. Are the outcomes happening? We've had a lot of emphasis on the front end of benchmarks, and how can we help everybody understand the emphasis on the outcomes?
And just adding to that, especially if you are a newer transition specialist, and we consider you new if you've been within YTP for less than 4 years, or if you are a new YTP site, these numbers are expectations for established programs. And it takes, when we talk about implementing a program, making progress towards making this whole theory of what YTP could be an actual site in a school, or having a transition specialist actually becoming efficient from first kind of getting their hands dirty on trying to figure out what YTP is, it is something that takes time. And we're not gonna expect you to meet all these things the first year or the first biennium that you are part of our YTP community. That's why we as technical assistance providers are here, and we reach out and we want to work alongside you to make sure that you understand what it is you need to do. And coming from a different world, as I as I was getting my master's degree, I was working as an electrical apprentice, and I was overseeing younger apprentices. And one of the big goals I always had to do as we got new people on our crews was to make sure that they didn't just work fast, but they actually worked well and did a good job. And I think the same applies here. As we set up sites, as we figure out our jobs, it's important to figure out what is our goal and how do we get to our goal and do a good job and get the engagement and the outcome. And then once we figure that out, kind of multiply the process and get better and faster at it. So it's not just get kids in and hurry up and get to know them, but also learn what is it that we really need to do? What are the interventions we need to put in place to help them be engaged, find a job, find engagement and training?
Garrett, there's a question from Martha saying, I think many sites are going to struggle as we get through the impact of the pandemic. Is that being considered?
I'll answer that, and then I'm going to let Michelle answer that in further comment. When I know in her components, she's going to address it and say, from Voc Rehab, we want everybody to know as transparently as possible, we're doing the best to help you serve students that we can. We want to be flexible and we want to support you. So absolutely, yes, that's being considered, Martha. And we know that you take it one step further, the database was offline for 5-6 months during the beginning of the biennium. And then the COVID pandemic came into place. So there's potentially some data that hasn't even been entered yet. Further that with lost transition specialists between the time of the database being off, they left their position, somebody else was hired. Nobody knows who to enter from the past person's work. So in terms of numbers to IGA and saying, I met my benchmarks or I met my outcomes, I think there's going to be a lot of grace given this go around. So Michelle will follow that up. I mean, she's already like, yeah, I see her head.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, what I also just keep thinking, like, if you go back just a few slides, can you go back a few slides to the fun the sandwich right there? I'm always really curious about the bottom slice of bread there. Like the program inputs, you know, like what's being done programmatically that leads towards those. That's what I always am just really excited and curious about. And I think where I want people to think about too is, yes, it's an outcome, but it's what you do that influences the outcome that is kind of the most exciting part of the conversation. So that's all.
Oh, Lynn, you guys can talk too, you know.
Yeah.
VR is making all kinds of exceptions in our ability to work with our clients and are not closing clients if they want to wait to work when COVID is more stable, which will affect the numbers for YTP. Good point, Lynn.
Numbers everywhere. But yeah, certainly if you're not closing a caseload because the student wants to wait to work and they get to work, that engagement outcome can increase. Absolutely. All right.
So Michelle, when you were saying, this is Lori Brown, so focusing on pre-eds, which a lot of us have been doing because some students don't want to go out and work, but we can still do a lot of pre-eds virtually and doing a lot of amazing, you know, things online still. That's a lot of us have been focusing on that. Still have been able to get a few jobs for students that are wanting to work, but those are things that we want to focus on when we address this in the grant cycle. Is that correct?
Yes, and I think it'll make sense as we go through in our rollout what we're going to be doing together. But yes, it's that thinking of, you know, it's like us planning for summer academy, right? We all want to be in person. That's what we want. But there's things happening out of our control, right? And so we're always adjusting. And that's what's happening with you and with youth right now. You know, there's this, we want it, but we're also constrained by things, and that's out of our control. And so it's just telling the story of what you're doing in the meantime to stay engaged with students. That matters most right now.
Yeah, great questions. All right. Was there any more? We're gonna do 3 more slides and then it's another Q&A time. So if we missed it, don't be shy, type it in your chat. Garrett's going to lead us through our next couple of slides here that talk about how outcomes are measured over time and how our benchmarks are measured over time and within the biennium as part of our cohort model. So take it away, Garrett.
All right. So yeah, we're adding the time component and trying to create a visual. And to start with, as you can see on the left-hand side, we have percentages on the side of the graph. And I can't put in every possible site size, but to give you an idea, there's a table that helps us to just keep in mind some of these numbers. And so on the very left here, I have the student-based number for your sites. We have 10, 20, 25, 45, and 100. You have everything from small to a fairly large size site. And then what these percentages translate into actual students when it comes to achieving those outcomes as engagement, and then our closed rehabs broken down into urban and rural. So take a look at these numbers now. This will come back up in just a second. So we'll start with outcomes. And the first outcome that is always mentioned is the 70% engagement rate. And as you see, there's a yellow box in the background, which is the time frame of the first biennium. And then the green box basically tags a second biennium on. And this line keeps growing. It doesn't stop at the end of the first biennium. The number keeps going up. And it starts at 0 on the outset because we follow the cohort. And as students leave YTP and continue to progress towards their goals, and we continue to be in contact with them even after the end of the biennium, and we get this information, this number is going to keep growing. So the same would be true then for our rehab for urban sites and for rural sites. When we talk about benchmarks, on the other hand, we see that that number is supposed to reach 100% within the 2-year time frame. And this is where often the pressure was like, let's get all these kids in and let's make things work. And we forgot about the importance to achieve those outcomes, because even before, when we moved those kids over into the next biennium, there isn't a direct pressure on working at achieving different benchmarks after they have a plan written and signed. And so they're kind of are not as much in focus for us. So I'm just going to pull up this table up here again so you can kind of fill in the blanks and see where you're at when it comes to these numbers. The other thing that happens, and I didn't want to put in too many lines and confuse you guys too much, but where the green box start, basically this graph starts over. And so you have a second set of students that you want to start working with at the beginning of the second biennium, and it starts at 0 and it grows and it carries on in the same shape as the graph that we have here.
And if you're looking at a really old monitor, yes, there are actually 2 colors, but it might be very difficult to see it.
Can you explain the bottom one more time? The July 1st, first year, July 2nd, first year.
Yeah, so
okay.
First year, oh, it should be first, oops. No,
first year of the biennium and second year of the biennium. So
this should be
the start
the second year
of year 2.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So within the YTP database, there are 3 measurements taken. And I'd have to look at it right now. I don't have them in front of me. I apologize. But like March 31st of the second year is one of the measurement points right here. And then again at the end of the year, one is taken, or it's maybe it's December, February, and April.
Benchmarks are right here. And then where you see the curve kind of change, that's where our benchmark points are. And then at the very end, that's the last benchmark.
I see it being March, January, and March.
I think you're right. Thank you, Shireen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So kind of trying to put this all into a nutshell. Outcomes are measuring our program success. What we do, how do we do it? Are we achieving what we set out to do? Benchmarks really measure our program progress. Are we moving at all? Is there anything happening that gets us closer to meeting our goals? There's one other measure that we haven't really talked about much, and that measure is demographics. So for those who have used the YTP database and have seen the reports, there's a lot of demographic information that we collect that also helps us to inform our program and how it works. One big thing is it assists us with equity of awareness and provision. One of the important things is we want to make sure that people have fair access and that we get the students that benefit from the program into YTP. So we look at gender, for example, and the different IEP disability categories, race and ethnicity as some of these measures that help us to see things. And basically any report I looked at, the gender equity is certainly not around 50%. I would say it's 40, 60 at best, and the worst I've seen was closer to 20, 80. But are we getting the right students into our programs? Are we maybe missing students that we should be aware of just because they're not as easy to spot within our schools? Are we proportionately having students from all the different disability categories within our YTP? This is kind of Jesse's really thing about talking about mirroring your student population. How many students do you have that fit your ASD category or your SLD category? And then when you look at your student population, how many students that experience disabilities within your school context fall under these categories? And are those numbers roughly, the percentages, in the same ballpark? That's really what we're encouraging you to look at, to find some more information on. Same with race and ethnicity. Know your population, and then take a look and see, are there certain groups of students that we are not getting into YTP for whatever reason? I know there are certain ethnic groups within our state that really try and avoid disability service this at all costs possible because they feel like it's a very negative stigma and they just don't want anyone outside of their own community to think that that's part of who they are as a group. And so they will avoid accessing any sort of services to help their kids be successful. So sometimes it's learning about who are the populations that are present within our communities, and then how do we need to rephrase our messaging when we offer YTP services to reach the student that would really benefit from the services.
Yeah, and Garrett, there's one more that didn't get put on there. And that just simply would be the demographics of my diploma certificate. Am I a modified diploma recipient? Do I have a regular diploma? Did I just exit with a certificate of completion? Where are we at with that spectrum? Some YTP sites may serve only those that have modified diplomas, and by extension then may be missing those that have regular diploma on a 504 plan that might have needed some supports and services and would have been a perfect candidate for YTP. So that's important to know and think about as you consider writing IGAs as well. Which client subset am I looking at and how does that play out? And certainly if you have more questions, reach out to your TAP about that as well.
This data really also helps us to look at our own program development. One obvious thing, it's for transition specialists or for teachers that partner with our transition specialists to look at skill development, to find out where is it that we need to learn more about to serve our students well, whether it's disability awareness to understand what autism spectrum disorder looks like, or what mental health challenges look like and how to appropriately respond to them. Or it's resume writing because whoever became the transition specialist didn't have a strong background in that specific skill set and needing to target that. Also, maybe getting to know the different ethnic or racial groups within your communities and getting to know what not to say or what to say and how to say things to be heard and to open the door for students to come into our programs. All right, it's your chance.
One question was, if you don't have a big ethnic population at your school, will you be penalized for this?
Well, you always have a big ethnic population. You might not have big ethnic diversity in some school districts. And again, it's trying to mirror the population that we say is our target. And so if you don't have a large population, you're not going to have a lot of students within a ethnic group that might be a minority in your community to work with. And then that's fair. But at least providing fair access to these minority students is an important thing to consider.
Michelle Pruden had a good answer to that. Use your district report card for comparison.
Or your team member, right? Your SPED director knows. They can help you figure it out, look it up. There's student information systems out there. What's the database that helps keep track of your IEPs? Things like that. That's part of the team component too. So you're not doing it all alone, Michelle.
Yeah, proportional is a key word there.
Yeah. What other questions? We went through that at record pace. We do have another speaker lined up to follow up and talk about how this all plays into things, but were there burning questions?
I have a question.
Thanks, Judy. Go ahead.
Is there going to be some leniency for YTP when students aren't able to connect with us, given the certain situations going on with COVID? I haven't had much success with one of my schools, especially with teachers not wanting students to participate during their 20-minute class times. And so students don't really know anything about my program. I haven't been able to connect with them because I'm not in the schools. And so they'll tell them a little short something about the program, I'm assuming, and then try and connect them with me, but I'll send them an email and kind of give them an idea of who I am and an invite to meet up with me, and I have no response. And it's been months, and I've reached out to the teachers. They've tried to coordinate things. Nothing's happened. I don't know where else to go from here. I have no students at this school, so.
And that was a brand new school, I believe. No,
it's a school I've had for 3 years. So.
Well, the short answer is yes, and we discussed it a little bit earlier in the call, but we're going to be as lenient as possible, and we're going to help you be as best suited for moving ahead as possible. We want to help you engage with other students. We don't want other schools to have to feel like they need to drop out because of COVID, right? We didn't meet benchmarks or our outcome goals, so do we deserve a new agreement with Voc Rehab? That's not where we're going with this. So absolutely, especially now, there's time to be flexible, and I'm sure Voc Rehab will work with us as we work with you to roll forward.
Do you have any suggestions?
Megan put a great thing saying that her learning specialists are letting her pop into their homeroom time. Our school has a homeroom 3 days a week. Not sure if your school has something like that. So I think you can work with your technical assistance provider and working with your teachers on ways that you can engage students more.
Increase student engagement, and maybe your local TNF can help with that. I know that they have great resources as well, and they've been doing some meetings with SPED department staff. It's a possibility.
Okay, yeah, and I'm meeting with them once a week already. They're a special ed team, and so I'll just keep meeting with them too, and also reach out to Avon and see where I can get with him as well.
And you may be able to invite your TAP if you're all struggling to come together for a PD day with the SPED department and say, hey, this is what YTP is. You maybe are missing out on it because we're funded to be in your school. I know Garrett has a great one-on-one PowerPoint for that purpose.
He's already met with them at the beginning of the school year, so.
We did that just before COVID.
Yeah. No, we did that at the beginning of the school year. So it was in September or maybe in August, right before school started. So.
There's a question here. How accurate is the data in our database for the 2015-2019 info that is on it?
Well, I guess that's a fair question, Pam. How accurate did the transition specialist in your site enter information during that time is what it would come back to, right? Because that's a reflection of the work that the transition specialist that was hired at that time used to put into the database. So it's hard to answer that any more clearly than to say if data didn't go in, then somebody got missed. And if data did go in, but wasn't followed up on, there's still time to follow up on it in terms of their engagements. So that's working with your technical assistance provider and modifying those records that exist from the past biennium, which, as you pointed out, was a 4-year window, 15 to 19, to allow for those corrections to be made.
There's a couple you guys can read. There's some people that are on the chat that I don't want to take up more of the time with it, but some great ideas on how you can get in, work with teachers. You know, Google Meets with students. Try to see if the teacher will give them points for contacting you.
Yeah, attend IEPs and so on and so forth.
I know Joyce raised her hand here a minute ago. Joyce, did you want to add something that was important?
It's probably not important, but I had 2 things. As far as the data, I don't know if you guys like me saying this, but look at the state averages. Just that will make you feel better, everyone. I'm just saying.
No, Joyce, you're absolutely right.
And the other thing is, Garrett was talking about data and that parity thing. And I was able to look up, like, my district is 63% male. So if my database is 68%, or my student base is 68% male, I'm only slightly off of that. So that's where the parity, I wouldn't want to make it 50-50.
Right, and that's true. You know, we all know that there is usually more males in special ed than females, so that makes perfect sense.
And Joyce Douglas is one that has really been leading the, I don't know, field, I guess, if we will, on mirroring the population. She created an Excel document years ago that says, I want to have this equity or this parity that she's talking about. So kudos to her. And if you need help, you might reach out to her and ask her some questions as well, if she's willing. I'm guessing she would be. So thanks, Joyce. Team Springfield, Tracy's smiling huge. We've got one more slide here. Go ahead and hit it, Garrett. The YTP database reminders about common things that our entry users, our transition specialists, often miss even now. And that might be forgetting to check a box here or may not be understanding. So we're going to highlight some. But this one, the engagement box under the YTP exit and follow-up section. When you exit somebody in the YTP database, transition specialist users need to click yes, they're engaged if that student is in fact working or in training. It's been overlooked a few times, so the statistic never gets counted as the person is actually working or in training because this box wasn't marked. So that's a user error that's coming up sometimes and deflating some of the statistics. Next. Check the 90-day box if the student has worked for 90 accumulative days since the YTP exit date. exit date for YTP doesn't mean the same date they exited VR necessarily, or closed at VR, as we should say. YTP has exit, VR has closures. This box is found under the 6-month or the 12-month data point on engagements. And what it's saying is, at any point in time, has the student worked at least 90 days? Could have been 30, they could have been off 45, they could have worked 45, been off 15, and then worked another 10 or 20, whatever, to get to 90 days. And once they have worked an accumulative 90 days, we want to make sure that box is checked so that credit can be given where credit is due. The third,
and you check that box even if they're not engaged at that specific time.
yeah, that's well said. If they had the job, they kept it for 3 months, but weren't engaged when you did the check-in at 6 months, but 90 days accumulated that they were working, check that box. And the third one that sometimes is overlooked is the benefits box. Benefits is simply asking, in a nutshell, it's asking, does this student pay taxes? Even if taxes of federal withholdings or state withholdings are the only thing taken out, that is a benefit. Taxes help fund retirement, they fund roads, etc. But that benefit is considered a benefits box. So don't overlook that thinking it's meaning health insurance, 401k and retirement and PERS. It's simply having taxes taken out or more.
Just backing up to the 90-day thing, students being in training does not count towards 90 days.
No, because training is not work. It is engagement, but it's not employment.
All right.
So
we want to thank you all for listening to our nerdiness and numbers and data and all the boring stuff that goes with that. It's important, and I hope we helped you understand things a little bit better. And if you have any questions that you were too afraid to ask, because it's a public setting, feel free to reach out to Jesse or I, or your technical assistance provider if you're not comfortable reaching out to us, and we will try and help you understand things a little bit better.
But before we get there, real quick, there's Joyce has her hand up. I want to acknowledge that before we move on.
Okay, sorry. This benefits thing, I did not know about, and I didn't pay attention to the 90 days thing. Are we able to go back? Should we just try to go as far back as we can and call it good, or what?
So if you're unable to modify a student record, please contact your CAP. If the system lets you in to do that right now, please do it yourself.
But I guess what I'm asking is, if I have 50 students that I never clicked benefits on, you don't want me asking you to change all that, right?
Oh, I would do it for you.
Oh, you're so nice.
We would bring them up to current. That's what we exist here for. We want to help make sure you're developing that memory that next time you do click it. So yes, we would have that conversation. And Gary, if you could show slide 14 real quick. I'm sorry.
14.
We do want. We're at 3 o'clock.
Can I just sorry, one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, they're getting benefits unless they're getting paid under the table or something.
Pretty much.
That's the first time I've heard that clarified. I never have checked the benefits box either, because I thought it meant health insurance and all that. And usually they're part-time, right? So thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, absolutely. We were seeing that happen. I'm hoping we can continue to clarify the database, make it as simple as possible. From this slide, folks, I just needed to nerd out here real quick. 2,487 students. That's the statewide number that, if we look at outcome for, that's where we would be. So let's round it up. Are we serving 2,500 kids in a biennium, collectively, with all of you guys on the call, with all of our districts, 2,500 kids? Are we doing, if it's 100% of intakes, it's 2,500 intakes with all of our voc rehab counselors. It takes coordination, it takes effort, it takes a village. That's you guys. So thank you. We can get there. And we can get 70% engagement knowing that it extends beyond 2 years. It extends to 3 years, to 4 years, to get that engagement mark to 70%. And now we're going to have a clean comparison as we look at these buckets of these cohorts moving along to look back over time, again, 4 years out from now or 6 years out from now to say, did YTP 2019, 2021 have 70% engagement? Why or why not? And what can we do to help keep this change going to continue to serve kids? So thanks again for that. It's important, I think, to have that big picture perspective too. Go ahead, Michelle, take us away. Slide 18.
Can you hear me?
We've got you.
All right. Okay, so I'm hoping it's really wonderful news to everybody, what I'm going to be sharing today. And coming into this role 6 weeks ago, this feels like it's going really, really quickly. And so I'm just excited to be going here. The good news that we want to share with you today is that we're not going to do an RFGP. We're not going to do the procurement process, like a formal grant application or IGA application. We're going to be doing amendments only for existing sites. All right. It is not competitive. It's not competitive, meaning you're not going to be scored or anything like that. This is going to be a collaborative process. We're going to be able to communicate with you along the way.
This is now time for cheering. Yay. We should see some emotion.
Good news for us too.
We did. We saw Michelle.
Excitement.
Yeah. Don't worry,
Sally.
guys. I mean, your TAPs are celebrating too. That's 200 hours of reading in 1 week. It's tough.
Now I woke up the puppy. I'm in trouble. So.
Uh-oh. Next.
Yeah, just that last bullet though, to me is really important, that it is simplified, but we still hope it's really meaningful. And it's going to be pretty fast and furious. So there's going to be an application for amendment packet that we're going to send out later on today here after the community practice. There are 4 required forms that districts will have to fill out and submit. Next, I go into the 4 forms next. I'm going to actually open them up here and show them to you. Can you hit next, Garrett?
While she's doing that, I want to see Danette dancing if she's dancing over there.
Michelle and Danette can dance together. Or Angie Roser won a trip to Disneyland.
Okay,
It's actually making me cry a little bit because it's less stress, and that hasn't happened in 2020. So,
yay! Oh, okay. So
It's made our Christmas break so much better.
Garrett, you're going back and forth here. So hold on just a second on the 4 documents really quickly. If you'll go to that one, what might be easiest is, so I'm going to actually open up these 4 documents for you right now. It's a biennium reflection. So it's some questions and a data summary, budget narrative, budget sheet, letter of commitment from VR. So I'm going to open each of those right now and show them to you just so you can have it in your head, what we're talking about here. Let's make sure. Hold on here while I get my, the screen share thing going. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, people can sing or dance or something. Okay. Oh, the navigation of a PC. Okay, can you see this?
We've got it.
Got it. Okay. So this is the amendment questions, and what we're asking. I want to make it a little bigger, at least a little bit bigger. Okay, is just to list your team, contact information for your business administrator, identify your students. Okay, so down here in these boxes, we're just asking for some demographic data. How many students are eligible, potentially eligible? And we want you to consider special education eligible students, students eligible for 504, and students with medical protocols. So throw that net really nice and wide. and then give us a number in these different categories. In the database, go to your site summary report. And I have a slide that shows this, and we want you to locate your site total and just identify how many students have applied to VR in the 1921 biennium and what percentage does that represent. Okay. Then also how many YTP participants were engaged in employment or training during the 1921 biennium. So some simple demographics right there. Then we want you guys just to reflect on this biennium. It's been a really rough biennium for everybody, right? But keeping in mind what's most important. Number one, describe the YTP services the site plans to deliver during the 21-23 biennium, how those services will be delivered, how YTP enhances IDEA. This is a big one for us. Remember, YTP is enhancing IDEA, so we want to just have that spelled out and have good conversations around that if you're struggling with it. Number two, describe the schedule. So we want to know that year-round services are still happening, that you still have access to students during the remote or the partial remote or whatever's going on. So please describe that in detail. Number three, describe how collaboration with the area VR counselor will occur, including how often, when, and where. Number four, describe the site's progress in meeting benchmarks and outcomes as outlined in the current YTP grant agreement for the 1921 biennium. So you'll see in the parentheses there, we're asking you to just kind of think about all those benchmarks and outcomes that Jesse and Garrett just talked about. And then number five, describe any challenges other than COVID closures and the shift to a cohort model with the database. We probably should have added fires in there. That prevented the site from achieving the benchmarks and outcomes as outlined in their current YTP grant agreement and or implementing the pre-ETS and or YTP activities. Describe what steps will be taken to ensure benchmarks are met or activities will be implemented in the coming biennium. So it's just a nice platform for us to read ahead of time and have a conversation with you, reflecting on this biennium and looking forward to next biennium.
I want to interject too, Michelle, that a key difference here in terms of not writing to RFGP, your technical assistance providers, Terry, Mary Jo, myself, Garrett, we are available to support you in answering these questions for the first time in I don't know how many years. So reach out to us and we can support as well. Sally?
Wow, that's a big deal.
Yeah, we've never been able to do that at all.
Yeah.
That's the difference of going through procurement and doing this as an amendment.
Yeah, the amendment is to extend your current IGA. Francis, you asked that question. What's this amendment even about? It's allowing YTP to go forward within your site. So good question there. Next, Michelle.
Yep. Okay, so then I'm going to show you.
Michelle, are you going down further? There is one question from Judy. How does this work for the ESDs? So.
Okay. Another one of the 4 documents required is this VR letter of commitment. Hopefully this looks familiar to everybody. And if it doesn't, basically what you're doing here is somebody on your team will take this to the branch manager of the VR branch that you work with, go over the content that's included in here, fill in your information. So what's your student base and everything like that. And then they sign that they support it. Somebody at your school district signs that you're in support together and working together, and that comes in to me as well. I have let VR branch managers know around the state to be watching for this, so they know that it's coming their way. Okay. Another screen share. Now we are on document number 3, the budget sheet. This looks familiar to some of you who've done it before, probably not to those of you who don't do the budget sheet. This is mostly the same. What we did do this time around is we broke out benefit rate is usually a percentage, and then we did monthly rate for insurance, because districts, those are usually flat rates bargained in your collective bargaining agreements, not necessarily a percentage. So that's broken out in this one. but it all adds up for you. Hopefully it's very user friendly. And you fill it out for both years of the biennium. And there's a secondary tab that was made by the wonderful, amazing Cherie Lewis in Park Rose as a support for people who are struggling with this planning. And she's really wonderful and helpful that way. So just a note that this is not required at all. It's just a tool to help you. And if you have like a new business team or a new business manager, think through how to get to these answers. And you will have to update, you know, all of your rates to match your district's rate in this. That's not required. The first tab is required. And a budget narrative. Where is the budget narrative? One more share here.
While she's saying that, don't forget those of you who don't have administrators on this or whoever's writing the grant to make sure they look at the YouTube video to get that information, or have them call the technical assistant provider for their area, because we want to make sure all of the admins or whoever writes the grant sees this presentation.
Yeah, and that's the WESD staff, or well, ESD staff, some of them perhaps are asking this question, who does this for our area? And yeah, it's usually your site admin. So a bunch of you guys are in consortia sites or ESD sites, and you'd reach out to your person. Michelle, you are muted.
Still muted.
The name of the YouTube video, you just go to the resources page for YTP, and that's how you can connect to it, Marilyn.
We have a YouTube channel for YTP. Yes, Michelle, we've got you back. Go.
All right. Okay. Now I got to figure out a new share. And that new share is this. Can you see the budget narrative?
No. Price proposal.
Of course.
Well, yes, we can.
see it.
Is that what it is? D1?
Yes.
Price proposal? Okay.
You know what's really weird is I can't see it, but I know what it is. And so the message is it's the same as last time. So you'll be able to look, you're going to think about, do I want to keep things the same or do I want to adjust it a tiny little bit? Because we're amending, remember, it's only going to be little adjustments that we're talking about here. And so you can use your last one as a format and just update the costs in most cases on these. I know some sites will want to anticipate using money a different way. And that's what the negotiation meeting that we have that I'll talk about in just a little bit. We'll talk about those things during the negotiation meeting. Okay, so those are the 4 documents. Garrett, can you share the PowerPoint again? Okay. Go ahead and click on through those. That's just what we covered. The biennial, the reflection questions was one. Next. Oh, I did want to show this. In the summary or the statistics that we're asking about, when it says go in the YTP database to your site summary, we just provided an example here because we're going to share these slides and they'll be posted on the website. So if you have a hard time finding that, here's a little example of where to find what we're talking about right here. Okay.
That's a YTP. That's a YTP site summary report that you're looking at.
Yep. Budget narrative, same as 1921. Next. Budget sheet. I already showed you that. So those are the 4 documents. Letter of commitment. Yep. So now the timeline. Okay. So today we're releasing the plan overview and the documents. January 11th, we're going to have a community of practice dedicated to amendment questions. All right. So if you have questions before then, it actually would be awesome if you could send them our way and we could try and prepare answers ahead of time. And I'll also say that you might have questions on the 11th that we can't answer, but we'll get back to you, so this is, again, supposed to be a collaborative process. February 12th, the application for amendment is due. So that's the 4 documents. Okay. March 31st, we have completed all of our negotiation meetings, and then all the paperwork to begin service July 1 needs to be done by June 25th. Now we're going to go over this one more time because repetition is good. Go ahead and hit next, Garrett. All right, so this is today right now. We're releasing everything. It's going to be recorded and posted on the YTP website on the front page. And we're going to email all of our current sites with the slides and the documents that you need. Next, January 11, community of practice is question and answer. Remember, celebrate, it's not a competitive process, so we'll be able to be communicative and collaborative along the way. And of course, again, if you stump us, we will get back to you with answers as quickly as we can. Next. So February 12th is the second Friday in February, and that's when the 4 documents are due. I want you to email them to me at this email address. And I really want to encourage early submissions if you're able to do that, because what it'll do is it'll allow us to pace out those negotiation meetings. And those will be me, your TAP, and whoever you want from your team, but it definitely needs to be your business person and an administrator at least. And those are going to be around 90 minutes each, and we have 69 sites. So if you just think about the pacing of that, if anybody can turn these in early, we would super duper appreciate that. We also understand you're slammed, and we're just going to pack them in if we need to, if we get them all on February 12th. Next. Okay, negotiation meetings completed by the end of March. Again, we will start scheduling those as soon as we get the documents submitted. We want 90 minutes just to connect, reflect, discuss what went well, and what are the plans for the 21-23 biennium. And we want to land in those meetings, if possible, on the necessary budget updates. What is my little, oops, the chat's covering this. Sorry. So I just put a little reminder here that we're working within a limited budget, and we've got to consider all of the site requests equitably. So some sites might be wanting to expand, or now that we've been talking more about paying students, I'm guessing a lot of sites might be requesting stuff like that. And so just understand that, you know, while we wish we could fund everything, we probably won't be able to, and we got to look equitably across the state at all the different needs. So the more that you describe the what and the why, the easier those decisions will be for us to make.
This might be a good spot. Michelle, Sarah Lynn wants to know putting in for conferences and travel.
Yes.
Online presentations, conferencing. Not sure what she means by that.
You know, I think we discussed this, and I think it's just the wisest to go ahead and plan like things will be in person. And then if you have overage, we'll be back at the table talking about creative ways to spend. I would rather have that be the case than underfunding something. So, okay, so
just one note on that. When it comes to events, Summer Academy will be in July in the next biennium, so it won't be this June as it used to be. So budget for that within the next cycle.
Yeah. Okay, so that's end of March, and then behind the scenes, papers shuffle back and forth, and we get signatures by the end of June. I'm aiming for June 25. I think that was the last full week of June when I looked, so that services can start with integrity on July 1. That's it.
I've got another question here. Oh, the thing just moved. Oh, will you be emailing our administrator and business office, or will you be including the transition specialists in the email?
So yeah, I think I know TAPS, you guys all have comprehensive groups, as do I. So when I do an all like this, it'll go to the transition specialist. It'll go to the admin in my region. And then I have an all business list that I can use. I don't think TAPS have the business list, so I can do that on my end.
Yeah.
Angie Roser is asking what do I need at Lane ESD on my end with my consortia?
I think I need to know more what you're asking there.
Can you talk about that, Angie?
I think you're muted, but she's new to the position. So as an admin ESD coordinator position, she's wondering what does she need to help each individual district do? And it's set your budget, figure out their FTE, figure out what their student-based number is going to be, coordinate with the ESD to see which department's going to house YTP, and we can have a discussion that's greater than this behind the scenes.
And I mean, if I were you, I would try and locate that past one and use it as a template to just adjust a little bit. And if you don't have that, let me know.
If you don't have it, Angie, Shireen probably would, by the way.
Other questions?
That is it on the chat box.
One other thing that I was thinking about that I know I've heard people have asked me, is it appropriate to have the transition specialist help write this? I say yes. If they have the time, they know what's going on the ground level. I think when I was an administrator, I would have really appreciated them taking a stab at all of the questions and then maybe handing it to me and I put my lens on top of it. So just, I guess I'm encouraging share the load, and we know Christmas break, holiday break is coming up, and we're not asking people to work through the break or anything like that, but just to think about how to share the load and work within our timeline.
I think every site has different ways of doing it. Some people, the transition specialists, have just always done it and then gone to their supervisors or their admin for signatures. When I worked, Terry and I were in 4J, we all worked on it as a team with the admin and all had different parts to it. So there's different ways to work it out to how your school likes to do it. But definitely you as a transition specialist need to have a voice in that too.
So does everybody have a clear understanding of the process and what's needed?
There's some nice thank yous here for the happy news.
All right. Happy to deliver it. Everybody on this team, ODE, VR, U of O, everybody knows how much schools are working and how hard you're working. And we wanted to try and make this as simple and accessible as possible. And we just thank you so much for everything that you're doing.
All right, that brings us to the end. And Michelle, we made it before 3:30.
All right.
2,500 kids. Let's help them, folks.
So watch for emails to come out with these slides, with the 4 documents. It'll be posted on the website. And holler if you need us. We're here for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to say everybody have a great break, and you all need some much needed rest and brain clears and whatever. But you've all worked so hard, and we appreciate you so much. And this is hard for all of us, those of you that are struggling to contact students and all of that. It's hard, and we get it. So don't beat yourselves up. That's the last thing we want you to do. We know you're trying as hard as you can.
All
We'll
right.
see you the 11th.
Bye, guys. Here's the 2021. Yay, we need it. Whoa.
Happy holidays, all you folks.
Bye, guys.